In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest trade talk from around the league. Could Brock Boeser be a good fit in Montreal? Could Patrick Kane end up in New York, but not with the Rangers, but with the crosstown New York Islanders? Plus, we also have some updates around the NHL and various injury updates, including star player Nathan MacKinnon. Will the Avalanche make a move sooner than they might have wanted to because of the ravage amount of injuries that they're dealing with here? All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today in today's video. Certainly have a lot to discuss. First up, we have some more news from the NHL waiver wire. We had a claim last night. We have more players on waivers here today. First up, the Anaheim Ducks claimed Avalanche forward Jason Megna off waivers, so he's now heading off to be a member of the Ducks organization. Alex Galchenyuk, on the other hand, has cleared, so he will remain with the Avalanche, and they'll have a period of time here where they could reassign him to the minors if they need additional cap flexibility. Given the amount of injuries they're dealing with, though, I'm not sure we're going to see that. They also had sent down Anton Bleek and Andreas Eglin as well. So I'm not sure if they're going to be recalling anybody additional or not. We'll see what they end up doing, but certainly the Avalanche and MacKinnon being out is not good news. They've already been without Landeskog. They've been without Nichushkin. Lehkonen had missed a big stretch. Some injuries in the back end. It's been quite a year of adversity for them trying to defend their Stanley Cup championship. So we'll see what they do, and we will discuss their potential trade needs a little bit later here in the video. Now, new on waivers today, we have from the San Jose Sharks, Evgeny Svechnikov, as well as Winnipeg Jets, Dominic Toninato. So we'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow if there are any additional claims or anybody else, additional players that matter, on waivers here as well. Now on to some other injury updates. We saw Montreal Canadiens forward Sean Monahan leave last night's game against the Canucks due to injury. Certainly Monahan's had a really good start to the year. No, I haven't seen the additional updates on kind of timelines or what he's dealing with, but I know he left last night's game hurt, which was not a good sign. Like I said, he's had a great start, and many believe we'll get him a good trade return later in the year, so we'll have to keep an eye on that situation in Montreal. David Savard's day-to-day. Brendan Gallagher, as I mentioned yesterday, out for a couple of weeks. So the injury bug continues to be around the Montreal Canadiens quite substantially on the forefront there. Now, as I mentioned as well, this day in hockey history. This is a big day in hockey history. Way back in 1995, which puts out 27 years ago, was the now really substantial, and of course we knew it right off the bat, it was back then as well, the Patrick Waugh trade. A few days back we had talked about this day in history when Patrick Waugh demanded a trade out of Montreal, going off the ice after being embarrassed, and today marks the anniversary of the actual trade, which came 4 days later when he was sent to the Colorado Avalanche. Certainly one of the greatest trades in Avalanche history. I don't think the Canadiens can say quite the same on their side of things. One of the worst deals. But when you're trading the best player in a trade like that, they are quite often very difficult to win. Those types of deals. They did get a lot in return, but nothing too substantial that had anywhere near the impact that St. Patrick did in the Avalanche organization, going on to win Stanley Cup again there after being a Stanley Cup champion early in his career with the Montreal Canadiens. Now, we should also have some NHL history tonight, provided that there's no lineup changes or any injuries that we're not aware of, which would be very unfortunate. But for the first time in NHL history tonight, we're going to have two players going head-to-head that have an 18 or more game point streak, featuring Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs going head-to-head against Dallas Stars forward Jason Robertson. Of course, Robertson's at 18 games, Marner's at 19. Most of Marner's points, or at least a bigger chunk of them, have been assists, where it's been the opposite for Robertson, being a goal-scoring machine. So it's going to be very interesting to see these two players go head-to-head and see if they can both continue their streaks. They're both very impressive for different reasons, and really, and it comes to Robertson especially, he's hard to shut down, whereas Marner tends to play more of the creating, playmaking type of role for Toronto. So we'll be very interested to see those two guys head-to-head. And personally, I really hope they both keep it going. Not necessarily cheering for either team or either player per se, but I do think it's good for the game to have some, active young players, especially being prominent names and top, offensively gifted players, having this type of, a forefront here on the NHL news and getting out there to help create new fans and create, different buzz around the league. So certainly nice to see, and I hope we see both streaks extended past tonight. It'd be nice to see them both get 20-plus games. I think that would be huge for not only their individual careers, but like I said, just good for the game in general, creating a more of a buzz for some of the young players out there, creating these kind of point streaks. Now, as I mentioned, we have some different trade talk to take a look at here today. First up, I want to take a look at an article that came from Montreal's Hockey Now website, looking at the fact that we know Brock Boeser is available in Vancouver. His agent has permission to speak to different teams, and they were questioning whether the Montreal Canadiens should get on this train and try to make a Brock Boeser trade. I mean, he's still in his mid-20s, signed for a couple more seasons, just over $6 million. So really, if he can get back to being a 30-goal scorer like he was expected to be consistently, that would be a good contract. Right now, it's maybe not so much. And I know many are feeling that the Vancouver Canucks might not. I wouldn't say I have to give him away. I don't think it's fair to say that. But they called it like a pedestrian return, meaning it's not going to be substantial. Like it might be, not a great time to sell. But at the same time, sometimes you have to sell low and just move on, because you just can't seem to rehabilitate the asset enough to boost it up, enough to boost its value. Now, if Boeser and Boudreau can get back on the same page and they can get them in the same roster spot lineup, and maybe he can go on a bit of a streak here, maybe that changes things. We'll have to wait and see. But certainly the Montreal Canadiens certainly have their fair share of young prospects and lots of draft capital they could offer to the Canucks in order to facilitate this type of deal. They have lots of defensemen, which I know Vancouver would love to have, especially for the younger side of the game here for their upcoming rebuild. At least that's what Friedman's predicting, is a major Canucks rebuild could be in the works, that the Boeser trade could set things off in that direction. Whether they offered up a guy like a Jordan Harris or Barron or any of these guys. There's lots of young defensemen that are not yet established in the top six for the Canadiens. That might be very intriguing for a Boeser type of trade. So I would suspect that for Vancouver's side of things, they'd be mostly interested in a top D prospect. At least that's my opinion on that. And of course, the other thing with Montreal, from a cap perspective, it might seem complicated, but of course, they have a lot of players that are expected to either be on expiring deals and not returning or being traded. And a lot of guys like, whether it be Jonathan Drouin, his time is coming to an end here soon. Mike Hoffman's expected to be moved and not be back here very soon. You got Dadonov, likely going to be moved and not back soon. You got Monahan, of course, who's injured now. Like I said, hopefully not too long. Been playing very well and well enough to get a good asset return. So I do expect him to be traded. And, they may not be the only ones. There's 4 or 5 guys there that could easily be moved by the Habs by the end of the year. So certainly to create some roster flexibility to bring in a Boeser type of player who could help them longer term, to me would be a wise investment. I mean, he could turn out to be a real good fit maybe with Suzuki and Caulfield. I know they were hoping for a Suzuki, Caulfield, Josh Anderson trio, and the Josh Anderson part of that trio to me hasn't quite worked out, which is why you don't see him play there on a consistent basis. But obviously, Boeser might be an option for them. I think there's going to be lots of interest in Boeser. I have no doubt there will be. I mean, obviously teams are going to have to try to get themselves a deal here, because obviously he does have some term and cash, and if he doesn't pick up the goal scoring, they might not see that as being a very favorable pickup longer term. So we'll have to see. But should Montreal be involved where they're at in their rebuild and moving forward? I think they should. To me, he's a young enough asset that fits, and they have the assets that Vancouver would want to make it happen. But I think they're going to have a lot of competition. I think a lot of teams are going to be trying to get themselves a Brock Boeser trade and on the cheap and for, a team-friendly deal here. So we'll see what happens, but they should absolutely be involved. Now, New York Islanders hockey now. Stefan Rossner writes about the possibility of Patrick Kane. Would he be of interest to the Islanders? It's all been Rangers. Well, right now, the two teams, the Islanders are in a much better spot standings-wise. We saw the Rangers, certainly they haven't been doing the greatest as of late, and there's some wondering if they're going to be able to get it together consistently. Now, I still personally believe in the Rangers. I like that roster. I don't think the run they went on last year was any kind of a fluke. There's lots to like there, but they do need a spark. They need to get it together, and certainly before they can be going out to make any large acquisitions, and before you're going to convince Patrick Kane that he should go to your town and play for your team, they're going to have to get themselves in a way better spot. Now, the Islanders are already in a good spot with the standings in the Metropolitan Division and certainly stand to make a potential run here. We've seen this team, again, not last year, but 2 years prior, be a really tough team to beat in the playoffs, go far, and come close to making the Stanley Cup final. Can they do it again? Maybe. To get there and get over that hump and take it a step further, though, they absolutely, we've been talking about this for like a year, they need more scoring. They need another top scoring forward to join that group of players to give them that extra spark. It's somebody who can play with Barzal especially, and Patrick Kane could very much be that guy. He can be the playmaking winger, he can be a finisher, he can do it all, and you got to know that Lou Lamoriello has certainly had his eyes on Kane for a long time, very familiar with him. They both worked with USA Hockey in the past, so there's certainly a familiarity from that front. And of course, Patrick Kane being a star player in the league for a long time. I know many have said that Lamoriello has long wanted Kane on his team, but really, who wouldn't? You could add almost every manager in the game to that list of who would love to have Patrick Kane be on your roster, right? So at the same time, they're kind of gonna have to be almost like a game of Bachelor Bachelorette type of thing, where you're gonna have a player almost have to pick you, so you're gonna have to show interest. But certainly, Patrick Kane has a full no move clause. So he will have to pick his destination, kind of like what we saw with Claude Giroux last year. Go to Florida. It's not going to likely be a great return, and we'll see how it goes from there. But certainly, like I said, you add Patrick Kane to the top six and get him to play with Matthew Barzal, that's a game changer for the New York Islanders for sure. That's a big upgrade on a guy like Josh Bailey, who really, is a healthy scratch at the odd time and just doesn't belong on that line, in my opinion. Josh Bailey has been a good career, a long-term Islander, well-respected by the fans, well-liked. I get all that, but he's kind of past this spot where he deserves to be in that spot still, and needs somebody that's an upgrade to really do damage in the playoffs. And Kane absolutely 100% could and should be that guy. Now, there's other targets out there they might look at as well that would also make sense, whether it be Vladimir Tarasenko in St. Louis, should the Blues continue to be on the streaky side, on the downward spiral. Of course, you could look at, even like a Bo Horvat in Vancouver, maybe move Barzal to the wing. Like, there's other options out there too that would certainly be very interesting on that front. So we'll have to see, where things go. Obviously, Bo Horvat, of course, was in Lamoriello. The connection there, it's kind of funny, would be weird in a sense, but obviously Lamoriello was the GM in New Jersey, bringing in Corey Schneider from Vancouver. And, of course, going back to the other way was the first-round pick that Lou gave to the Canucks for Corey Schneider, which they drafted Bo Horvat. So, be, full circle if he could bring him back to his squad on Long Island. Not that there's been a lot of talk and rumors about Horvat being a target of the Islanders. Doesn't have to be. I think they could go that route, but more than likely going to go the route of a scoring, sniping type of winger if they're going to add before the deadline. So that's why I think Kane makes a lot of sense. Tarasenko makes a lot of sense. And anybody else that kind of, even Boeser for that matter. You could add the Islanders. It's the same thing with Montreal. This article is focused on Kane, but really, could Boeser do the same thing for the Islanders that the argument in the article about Montreal did? Absolutely. And to me, it makes perfect sense that he could be a guy to work well with Barzal and certainly make the Islanders a more offensively gifted team. The contract's not too bad, but again, he's going to have to get back to his old scoring ways for that to be fully justified. That much we can all agree on for certain. Now, as I mentioned as well, with the Nathan MacKinnon injury, I know Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick talked about on the Jeff Merrick show today about the Avalanche, and Merrick brought up the fact that Friedman think the Avalanche are going to maybe make a trade sooner instead of later because of the long list of injuries, now including top centerman and top player Nathan MacKinnon. I mean, MacKinnon's now on that injured list. We don't know how long he's going to be out just yet, but he is going to be out for the Avs to be dealing with here. Now, of course, Friedman says he still feels that they're more than likely going to take their time, that he doesn't think they're going to necessarily rush out and make a deal here real quickly, but he feels that eventually they're going to make a big push for either Horvat in Vancouver or Jonathan Toews in Chicago. So either of those guys could be a very capable number two centerman, which has certainly been kind of the weaker spot on the team, of course, after losing Nazem Kadri's been tough to replace. Alex Newhook's, for the most part, gotten to play that role, but for the most part hasn't been delivering at the highest level that they hoped he would too. But at the same time, I think they would have known that it's going to take him longer than that to really grow into that spot, and that getting a rental at the deadline was probably always part of their plan going back to the offseason when they knew that Kadri was just priced out of their market and it wasn't going to be able to return, just wasn't going to happen. But, certainly Horvat or Jonathan Toews to Colorado would be a major boost. But right now, Joe Sakic, Jared Bednar, and the Avalanche, to me, they've got to be just hoping to be healthy and to get through the season and make sure that they don't fall out of a playoff spot, because if they get too banged up, that's certainly going to be a cause for concern. But so far, they've treaded water here pretty well, and at this point, still seem like they're on track in order to get in. And then once you get in, anything can happen, as we know, and they can hopefully add later on to get healthy and still be able to defend their cup championship with a lot more integrity than they are able to today, considering how many names are not able to dress for the current games that are on the schedule. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We're still coming to you live from Orlando, Florida, a Walt Disney World Resort. It'll still be here for a little while longer. Eventually, later in the week, we're going to make the trek down and go to Universal Studios and spend a little bit of time there before we head back as well. So certainly, like I said, subscribe, stick around if you're new. This is not my normal recording setup. I'll be back home here later in the month to get back to normal, but we'll keep you up to date in the meantime. Just like I was home, no changes on my part, still videos every day, keeping up the news. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.